One of the major aims of most modern games is to make games more accessible to a wider audience, and that includes worse players. This is a noble cause, but it has had certain multiple effects on the gaming industry. There's the obvious low-hanging fruit of games railroading you and completely spoiling puzzle solutions, but one thing I miss is multiplayer games with higher skill expression. Now you may argue that a lot of games nowadays are still kind of hard, and you're right. The problem comes when you want to differentiate yourself, who hopefully you've gotten pretty good at the game of your choice from the average player. So, we're going to look at what quantifies a skill expression, how modern games lack it, and how games would benefit from adding more ways to express your skill. Let's start this off right with the definitions, shall we? To really explain what skill expression is, I'd like to categorize two types of main skills. The first one is what I'd call typical skills, ones that come up in every game and usually are the bread and butter of a good player. An example of these typical skills is stuff like aim, positioning, spacing, whatever, which is important and what often separates a good player from a bad one, but unimpressive to see most of the time, as that's what's expected. The result is that while these skills are important, they don't really tie to skill expression. This is where special skills come into play, which are either specific techniques that require a ton of practice, or they are previously mentioned typical skills taken to the absolute extreme. An example of a technique would be map-wide jumps in TF2, as often they take hours of practice just to get down once, let alone be able to do them in an actual match. An example of a skill taken to its maximum difficulty would be a double air shot in TF2, as while hitting someone in the air with a projectile is hard enough, hitting them again while also accounting for knockback that you just applied to them is an occasion worth getting hyped over. Parries also kind of fall into this category, although they need to have tight enough time for them to really be worth something. As while reflecting a rocket in TF2 is expected, parrying all 15 hits of Chun-Li's super at EVO lands you in the history books. These special skills usually require a higher time investment and active practice, so they're the main source of skill expression in the game. And to finally cover skill expression itself, it's using these advanced skills to further differentiate yourself from other players. While a typical player would go for the safer option in most situations, while occasionally going for the risky play, the more advanced player can express himself by only going for the hard maneuver. A good example of this would be any spy main that primarily goes for trick stabs. As while usually a trick stab is a last resort move, these players manage to dominate lobbies by using them to turn spy into a melee class. Got all that? Good. Now let's go back to why skill expression hasn't disappeared over the years. When you look at a lot of popular modern day shooters and their clips, you realize that a lot of the time they get repetitive real fast. Once you've seen one Warzone clip, you've seen them all. Build battles in Fortnite look exciting to watch at first, until you realize you have no idea what's going on and the fact that this is basically what only happens at higher levels. It also applies with Overwatch and Apex too. So what's going on here? Why do all these different games share the same problem? The main reason they all share is two design pillars, which are stands or goals you want to design your game around. These pillars and questions usually are, our game is for everyone, and play it your way. The first pillar is all about widespread appeal, which means trying to grab every kind of player from the skill range, especially more casual or low skill players. The second one is about player empowerment, which can come from multiple different sources, but mostly manifest in the form of advanced movement abilities or heroes. And people really like this power. It feels inherently satisfying. However, it also comes with something else. A skill ceiling. And with a skill ceiling comes people trying to push it to the limit, but this also results in them beating up casual players like an alcoholic father. So, what do you do to accommodate these lower skill players? Make the aim easier in one way or another, by cranking up the aim assist to 11, making easy to use weapons, or by making the hitboxes a lot bigger. But once you have people getting lasered down by easy to aim weapons, you must severely reduce the number of sightlines, resulting in simplistic map design, and causing the move to be only really useful for ambushes rather than advanced traversal. There's a video by Fabian that goes more into depth on this game design philosophy, but the main point is that it usually streamlines the most impressive skills of the game into one category, which means a lot of the clips of the most impressive plays look the same due to them requiring the same skill set. However, there's one more main design pillar that hinders skill expression, and that's the mass removal of any unintended techniques. It doesn't matter if most of the player base likes it. If the developers didn't intend for it to be in the game, then let's go. Because the developer is always right. When you combine all of this, it usually results in games that, while it can have a high skill ceiling in some way, it's usually mostly reserved for a certain category with no real standout ways to differentiate yourself. Not to say these games have no skill expression, mind you, but it's much more limited. Something else to note is the patterns don't fully apply across all modern games, but again, you get the idea. But what do we really lose outside of clip dumps becoming more repetitive? To do this, we'll first look at one famous version of skill expression and what it demonstrates. Rocket jumping is one of the best movement mechanics in an FPS game, not just because it promotes skill-based movement, not just because it's well balanced, but also because it demonstrates the progression of your skill. One of the most satisfying things to see in any game, heck, in anything we do, is to see ourselves grow, become stronger, and to see better results. Rocket jumping is a game mechanic that encapsulates this, as even grasping the basics has a learning curve, which may seem like a barrier to entry to some, but it's part of the appeal to people like me. After you grasp the basics, there's still a long road ahead in terms of mastery, as you go on to learn how to airstrafe, learn how to wall jump, learn pogos, surfs, specific interaction with geometry, and more advanced forms of all of these. Sometimes you'll struggle to grasp a certain part of a jump. One day you'll eventually get it down, and soon enough, you may be ready to do it in the middle of a match. With all these techniques, it also makes rocket jumping incredibly versatile, as you can use it to get to the front lines faster, you can use it for basic positioning, you can use it to retreat, you can use it to push your office, or you can use it to evade the IRS. This creates many different playstyles depending on personal preference, those of which can be enhanced by practicing certain skills. And with it, you get to see yourself evolve as a player in terms of skill. It's fantastic game design, and it doesn't just apply to rocket jumping. Combos in fighting games are another form of this, as often you'll see your strengths become more elaborate over time and deal more damage, signaling progression to the player. However, I haven't really mentioned extreme skill checks since the beginning, so how about we look at some of these extreme maneuvers and how you can spice up fights by adding a now or never factor to the mix. Let's start with a Halo 3 clip to demonstrate my point. Here we see an enemy with a gravity hair that has recently grabbed an overshield, killed one of my teammates, and is now closing in on me. I've also just spent all my battle rifle ammo, so it's safe to say that I'm in a little bit of trouble. But would I lose? Nah, I'd win. The plasma grenade is one of the best examples of an extreme skill shot. It's a slow projectile with a demanding arc and doesn't have the unpredictability of a frag grenade. But if you land it dead on, whoever got stuck is now dead. Throwing it is also a gamble on its own, as you're stuck in the slow grenade throw animation. It's not nearly as reliable as the frag, meaning that if you miss, you probably will die. High risk, high reward at its absolute finest. This adds an extra layer to the fight and makes it much more exciting, as there's a chance that the player who's losing the battle can completely reverse it at any time. This also makes the player less stressed, as no battle is truly unwinnable. You can say it puts pressure on the enemy to form, but most of the time you won't be worried about the opponent hitting a super powerful yet extremely difficult reversal, because most people simply won't take the chance. This makes the people who will take it stand out more, therefore causing more expression in the game. The most extreme example of this skill check reversal is in Halo 2, in which button combos completely cut down opponents, but it also completely breaks the time to kill of the game, so I wouldn't say it's perfect. Some better examples would be trick stabs in TF2, universal parries in fighting games, quick skilling in any FPS game. You'll probably come up with some of your own examples in the comment section. So these tricky moves greatly benefit multiplayer games, but what does this have to do with expression exactly? Well, I'm glad you asked. With all these techniques and mechanically demanding maneuvers, you have many different things to master in the game. However, not everyone will want to master everything. We all have limited time on Earth, and not many people want to try to become great at anything in a specific game. However, you'll still probably want to get maybe a few things down to get the upper hand on an enemy. And this is where the expression part of skill expression comes in, as different specializations result in different playstyles, and while one may want to become great at combos, another might want to go for raw aim and trick shots. You're guaranteed to stand on one way or another beyond simple loadout or character choice, and the more forms of difficult techniques a game has, the more you're allowed to properly express yourself. A good example of this is Ultra Kill, which is a ton of different things to master and results in no player having the same way to take down a crowd of enemies. Sure, a lot of techniques end up becoming underutilized by the majority of the player base, but that's the point. Not everyone will do everything, and that means you're more special simply for doing a certain technique. And hey, with new techniques and tricks, you have goals to strive for, and goals are key for wanting to play a game longer. And that brings us to my final point on why we should strive for high skill expressive games. They are inherently more replayable. When talking about replayability in games, usually there's a lot of things brought up. New Game Plus, different builds, random elements of different playthroughs, multiple endings, the list goes on and on. However, one thing that isn't mentioned too much is a skill ceiling. People like learning new things, and video games are great at providing this feeling of improvement. Sure, you can simply improve at basic skills, but eventually you'll feel like you've plateaued. So what do you do then? Find something that's more tangible to improve at. Skill expression techniques are great for this, and the more you have, the more you want to continue playing. There's a reason Team Fortress 2 manages to have a sustainable player base for so long, and that's because it has a lot of hard stuff that makes you go, I want to learn how to do that. It's also possible that fighting games that have motion inputs tend to last longer than fighting games without them because they increase skill ceiling of the inputs. But this is more of a drunk theory rather than something set in stone, so don't quote me on this. Overall, we should be putting more hard stuff in our games that set players apart and generally improve gameplay experiences. And if you don't feel like learning them and prefer to focus on fundamentals, that's still another form of skill expression in its own. Thanks for watching, tell what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.